students, and welcome to another interesting topic called concept of a computer file. The concept of a computer file. Have you ever seen a computer file before? Have you experienced a computer file? Have you made use of a computer file? Have you been able to organize, to handle, or to access a computer file? In this class, we shall be discussing all of that. We shall be talking about a computer file, talking about a record and a field. We'll also be talking about a data item. Also look into file classification, file organization, methods of accessing file, and the criteria for accessing file. All of these are what we'll be discussing in the class. What is a computer file? A computer file is the most basic unit of data that users store on a disk. It is a computer resources for recording, a computer storage device primarily identified by its file name. Just as words can be written on paper, so can data be written on a computer file. And when you talk about computer file, what are the basic terminologies of a computer file? Now, the very first one is a field. Now, what is a field? A field is an elementary data item characterized by its size, its length, and type. What then is a record? A record basically is a collection of related fields that can be treated on a unit from an application point of view. When you talk about a record, records are just collection of fields. You have fields like a name, so a collection of various names is a record. Collection of ages is a record. Collection of house addresses of various elements is a record. We move on to talk about what is now a file. A file simply is a collection of records. It deals with storage and retrieval of data in a computer. Now you know that programming languages incorporate statements and structures which allows users to write programs to access and use the data in a file. Now when you talk about file basically it makes many tasks of information oriented in society that requires people to deal with voluminous data and to deal with this data efficiently and speedily. Move on to data item. Now what is a data item? A data item refers to a single unit of values. A single unit of values. When you are referring to data item, it's just talking about a single unit. For example, a row of numbers can be a name, date of birth, age, etc. There are basically three types of this data item. But let's move forward to elaborate more on data item. Data item describes an atomic state of a particular object containing a specific property at a certain point. Now when you talk about data item, what comes to play is that you are referring to one singular unit of values. There are types of data item. We have the numeric data item, you have the alphabetic data item, you have the alphanumeric data item. The numeric data item deals with numbers. The alphabetic data items deals with alphabets. ranges from A to Z, and the alphanumeric deals with combination of A and Z. Now, file organization. Basically, file organization refers to a logical relationship among the various records that constitute the file, particularly with respect to the means of identification and access to any specific records. When you talk about file organization, what comes to play is file structure, and there are three types. You have um, the the sequential file, you have this serial file, and you have the random file. Also, we have the sequential file organization. The sequential file organization. Now, when you talk about the serial file, a serial file is one in which the information of file is stored in it to have been added in order in which they occur or have been saved. It means that they come in a chronological order. When you talk about sequential file, a sequential file contains records organized by the order in which they were entered. Records in sequential files can be read or written only sequentially. You have index sequential file. The records in index sequential file are stored in order that they are written to the disk. What then is a random file? A random file, also called a direct file. What does it do? They are files that are record based with an internal storage that supports a direct access. This means that your program can be read from or written to a specific storage. Now that the methods of accessing file, we have a serial access, we have a random access, and we have a sequential access. All of these accesses are ways in which files are being accessed. You can access a file serially by checking them on the order in which they are being entered into the disk. When you talk about serial access basically talks about an analogy to a serial file of a grocery list. You add items to the list in order that you may actually need them or think of them. Serial file, they move in chronological order: 1, 2, 3. Sequential file, they move accordingly. So we are going to access a file using sequential methods. What you are expected to do is, if you don't get to 1, you can't get to 6. So they move in a sequential order. From the diagram you can see 1, 2, 3. But for a random access, also called a direct access, you can actually get your file from any location. You want to go to 6, you move directly to 6. You want to go to 7, you move directly to 7. You want to go to 8, you move directly to 8. All of this is what differentiates a sequential access method of accessing file and a record access. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and see you in the next class.